Hey Church 180, our Church 180 What Up page is a page designed to be a one-stop shop with everything you need to connect with Church 180 over a weekend. There are links for signing up for things, following along with the message, and even Spotify links so that you can listen to the music we will be singing in the online service. You can access that page via church180sd.com/whatup or just by opening the camera on your phone or holding it over the QR code that is on your lyric sheet that you should have received. Here's what you need to know today. We're preparing to meet in the park much more frequently, and in June we are bringing back 180 Kids. This will be our kids ministry for ages 3 through all of elementary. Here's the deal though, as we continue to meet more frequently, we are looking to boost our setup team, hospitality team, and 180 Kids team. If you're interested in serving with Church 180 in one of these ways, please let us know via the Connect card that you have. And all the details are on your What Up page, so check it out. We exist to inspire hope because so many of you have decided to give generously. We believe that your generosity is the very thing that enables Church 180 to live out your vision of seeing more and more people turn toward hope in Jesus. That said, you can give online or set up a recurring financial gift at church180sd.com/give. It's on our What Up page, or mail a check to our PO box that is on our website. Hope you enjoyed the service and have a great day.
Coach Bob Bowman took one look at this kid and he knew that he had the makings of a champion. I mean, he was a little stressed out. He was an emotional kid. He was kind of a roller coaster and a little bit of a wreck with some ADD and everything. But he looked at his body, looked at his genetics, and knew that he was destined for greatness in this sport. Knew that he was going to be a freak athlete in this sport. He knew that the trick, though, would be to get to establishing in him the right rhythms and the right routines with which to do it. And so he constantly would tell him, as he started to work with him as a young athlete, he constantly would tell him, hey, get the videotape rolling, which was a metaphor that he would have him do for visualizing the perfect race, and visualizing every last stroke through the water and every last minute detail to the race that he would be performing. He was taught the art of extreme visualization, but the rhythms and the routines went well beyond even that for young Michael Phelps. See, by the time that he was at the 2008 Olympics, and the moment that I'm about to share with you, he had received 9 gold medals. 9 gold medals, on pace to be the most decorated athlete, Olympic athlete ever. And that morning in 2008 in Beijing, he woke up just like many other mornings in his life before race day and got to the rhythms and got to the routines of his day. He got out of bed at 7 a.m. He threw on his sweatpants and he headed right to the cafeteria where he would start to put down part of his 6,000 calorie a day diet, where he would have oatmeal and he would have eggs and he would have 4 energy drinks just to start off his morning that's there. And then, after that, exactly 2 hours before his race, he would begin his stretching routine, which would last for a half an hour of just stretching that he would do before every single race. And about an hour and a half out, he would take the water and he would begin his 45-minute workout routine in the water that morning. And then 45 minutes out, he would take 20 minutes to put on his gear for the specific race that he would be performing. And as soon as his gear was on, he'd have 25 minutes left with which he would put on his noise-canceling headphones, bring up the hood on his sweatshirt, and get into intense visualization and focus mode. And this particular day, he was about to contend for his 10th gold medal, and he did the whole routine, and he was sitting there visualizing the race to the very last detail, visualizing the race. And at 10 a.m., he took to the starting blocks. The gun went off. He dove into the water, and he immediately knew something was wrong. Something was out of whack. Something was not right. See, it was a 200-meter butterfly race for his 10th gold medal, with which he already held the world record for this event. But he knew as soon as he jumped into the water, something was off, because a seal in his goggles was starting to take in water, and he was starting to quickly not be able to see the lane that was in front of him. And he even recorded that at about 100 meters down and 100 meters left to go in this race, he could see almost nothing and relied almost solely on his visualization tactics. See, he knew it would be about 21 strokes to each side of the pool for him. And he counted each one of them out and could not see anything. And so 50 meters left to go, and he's going down, can't see anything, gets to 20, gets to 21, feels the wall, grabs up, takes off his goggles, looks up, and sees that he beat his own world record, for his 10th gold medal in the 200-meter butterfly. And see, thus is the legacy of Michael Phelps. And so much of who he is was attributed to the right rhythms and the right routines being the right habits. And see, here we are, we're in 50-50, and what we've said, our series is 50-50, and what we've said for the last 3 weeks, and now, even in our last week, is that nearly 50% of what you do is habitual. So make what you do repeatedly intentional. Make what you do repeatedly intentional. See, to review, what we've said is this, is half of your life, half of your life is habitual, meaning half of your life is a loop in your brain that goes from a cue that you have to a routine that you perform, to a reward that you experience. And if the reward's good enough, your brain stores it in, locks it away, and it's like, okay, half of your life is a brain loop. Half of what you do repeatedly is a loop in your brain that is based on a cue, then a routine, then a reward. And what I've said every week is that, the cue can be the time of day, it can be a person, like you do this with Jim at this time. It could be something that you visualize. A cue is a trigger that elicits a response, and then based on the routine that you have, your brain is storing away whether to do it again. So 2 weeks ago, we talked about, we were right here talking about the power of belief in God to change our habits. Last week, we followed that up and we talked about keystone habits, and we said this. We said a keystone habit is a habit that dislodges other habits and begins a chain reaction of new habits in our lives. We said, we used a couple of examples. We talked about exercise. We talked about eating together as a family being a keystone habit. Eating together as a family unlocks a bunch of other habits where you're more likely to raise children with better homework skills, have higher grades, children have higher grades, children with greater emotional control and more confidence. Eating together as a family is a keystone habit that spills over into other habits in our lives. We went into the habit of making your bed, which we're going to go to in a few minutes a little bit more, but we said people who make their bed generally have greater productivity, a greater sense of well-being, greater discipline at sticking to a budget. Making your bed is a habit that spills over into your other habits and creates new habits. It dislodges other habits, and it begins a chain reaction of habits happening in your life. So this week, much like with Michael Phelps, I'm talking about rhythms and routines and talking about habits and keystone habits. I want to look at the rhythm and I want to look at the life of Jesus and discover what I believe are a few of his keystone habits that I believe are absolute game changers for your life and for my life. See, after all, absolutely no one has left a greater mark on this planet than Jesus himself. There's no dispute, there's no argument, there's no contender, there's no one that you're like, well, yeah, what about them? Like, no one. Here we are 2,000 years later, online this morning, in the park this morning, with the chorus of churches all over this city, all over this time zone, and all over this world, lifting up and worshiping Jesus and talking about his life and the stories that he lived. No one else can say that for the most part. The way. No one, and I guess I would say this, if you want to leave a smidgen of an impact upon this world, I think it would be in your best interest, whether you believe in him or not, to look at his life and to look at the way that he lived his life and start to understand some of the keystone habits that he had and adopt them for yourself if you want to make an impact like Jesus made an impact. I believe that's true. So here we go. We're going to go on a pit stop today. We're going to go on a pit stop of what I see as some of the keystone habits of Jesus. So to begin, we're going to be in the book of Matthew, chapter 8, verse 23 through 25, and it says this, okay? There's a big storm going on. They've been doing tons of ministry, him and his 12 disciples at the time, and they've been all over the place. And so it says, then they got in the boat, and his disciples followed him. And suddenly a furious storm came up on the lake, so that the waves swept over the boat, but Jesus was sleeping. So there's a huge storm, and Jesus is in the boat, and I mean, old school boat, not like new school boat. Don't think cushions and pads and and beds and pillows and stuff like that, but Jesus was sleeping. So verse 25, the disciples went and woke him up, and they said, Lord, save us, we're going to drown. See, understand this. The disciples are in full-blown panic mode. Full-blown panic mode. And Jesus, while the disciples are in full-blown panic mode, is in full-blown rest mode. I need you to get the contrast of what's happening on. We're talking like 12 guys freaking out and Jesus. 12 guys losing their mind, thinking they're going to die. Jesus asleep in the boat. See, I need you to get that contrast. See, Jesus, one of the keystone habits that he had was a habit of resting well. Jesus could rest really well. So the first one is this, the keystone of habits is rest, okay? And we've talked about this before, so I don't want to spend too much time on this, but I do want to spend a little bit of time on this because I remember whenever I used to run marathons. I haven't ran a marathon in a long time, but I used to run marathons, and you would in order to run a marathon, you don't just go out and do it. You have a schedule with which you stick to that prepares you and gets you ready for the marathon. And so you'd have these things called rest days that you needed to take serious. But then you would have like different days throughout the week that were designed for different types of runs. And so there were days, there was always one long run in the week that you'd run, sort of fast, but like sort of slow. Kind of like that race day pace that you're shooting for. But then there'd be these other runs leading up to that throughout the week. And some of them would be runs where you need to really push it and get your lungs fired up and run as, fast for periods of time. And then there were days that you needed to just go out and just kind of trot and almost like a little bit more than a walk. And what, for rookie runners like me, what was very typical and what a lot of coaches and people who are experienced, what they'd say is that the problem so many times with rookie runners is that you go out on the slow days and you run too fast, and you go out on the fast days and you run too slow. And all of your running starts to blur together and you don't live up to your full potential. And so I'm convinced of this, okay? I'm convinced that many of us don't live up to our full potential in life because we don't rest well. I'm convinced that many of us live out our days less than because we haven't figured out how to rest like Jesus. We haven't found how to be at peace like Jesus and at rest like Jesus. See, rest and productivity have a symbiotic relationship. They just do. And so Jesus modeled rest very well for us. We're not, like I said, we're not deep diving into this one. If you want to hear more about rest, I want to encourage you and invite you to go back to the beginning of this year in our messages where we did a series called Different, and we spent a couple of weeks talking about this very idea of resting. And so I'd love for you to check that out. So the first keystone of habit of Jesus is that of rest. The second one is this. It's kind of like it, but it's nuanced. It's that of prayer. Okay, and we covered this last week, so we're just going to skip by this a little bit again, but I want to look at a couple of passages here. Mark chapter 1, verse 35, one of my favorite passages. Mark just gets right to the point in his writing about the life of Jesus, but he says this, very early in the morning, when it was still dark, Jesus got up, left the house, went off to a solitary place where he prayed. And throughout the Gospels, I've made it a habit to just, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, the accounts of the life of Jesus, I've made it a habit to underline the places where Jesus just gets away from people and rests and spends time with God. Because it's remarkable. If you just notice it, he does it all of the time. See, prayer, here's the thing. Prayer centered Jesus for his purpose on this planet. It did. Prayer centered him for his purpose on this planet. We said this last week. I'll just run by it. Prayer changes you, period. It changes you. It moves the heart of God, but it changes you. Prayer has the power to reduce stress and anxiety in our lives. Prayer can make you more loving and trusting and forgiving. Prayer can help you with self-control. And all of these have been shown within psychology itself, but well before that were made known from the life of Jesus and the rhythms and the routines and the habits, the keystone habits that he had. See, praying is a keystone habit that begins a chain reaction to all kinds of other habits in our lives. So prayer is the second keystone habit of Jesus I want to point out to you. The third one is this, okay? The third one is work/serve. Work/serve. See, Jesus, the life of Jesus was marked by hard work. It just was. I love the story. We talked about how we're going to come back to making your bed. I love the story of William McRaven, who was a 37-year Navy SEAL and retired as a 4-star admiral. He's most known nowadays for a speech that he gave in 2014 at the University of Texas that went viral worldwide via social media. But the speech then became a book that he wrote titled "Make Your Bed," and I want to just read to you an excerpt from that book that I think is really powerful when we're talking about this idea of hard work in serving. He says, if you make your bed every morning, you'll have accomplished the first task of the day. It'll give you a small sense of pride, and it'll encourage you to do another task and another and another. And by the end of the day, that one task completed will have turned into many tasks completed. Making your bed will also reinforce the fact that little things in life do matter. See, this is a keystone habit, I believe, that fuels that of working hard, like the keystone habit of Jesus. See, you see, this may be the thing I think we think of most when we think about Jesus, more than anything else on the cross. Like, he was a man on a mission. I mean, he worked hard, and he worked hard from a state of rest, but he worked with a ferociousness, and he worked with a tenacity, and he paid attention to the smallest details. Like I said earlier, many of us don't live up to our fullest potential, especially in working hard in life because we don't rest well. I think, on the other hand, some of us won't leave much of an impact on this planet because we have learned to rest way too well. See, they're a contrast, they're a balance. They live in symbiotic relationship. You rest so that you can have work to do and work to your full potential in life. See, I think many of us are kind of duped into believing that if we were on this like never-ending hypothetical like beach vacation, we would be like insurmountably happy. The reality is that I know this to be true, and you know this to be true, that after a while that would suck because you were made to do good works. You just were. You have good things to do with your life that you were made for, and if you live up to anything less than that, then you will be disappointed, and life will suck. It just will. My point is that Jesus went to work on this planet with tenacity, and I think he instructed us and showed us, and it was an example to us to do the same. I love this passage, Luke chapter 4, starting in verse 14. It says, Jesus returned to Galilee in the power of the Spirit, and news about him spread throughout the whole countryside. He was teaching in the synagogues, and everybody praised him, and he went to Nazareth where he'd been brought up. And on the Sabbath day, he went into the synagogue, as was his custom, and he stood up to read. And the scroll of the prophet Isaiah was handed to him, and unrolling it, he found the place where it was written, the Spirit of the Lord is on me, because he's anointed me to proclaim good news to the poor. He sent me to proclaim freedom for the prisoners, recovery of sight for the blind, and set the oppressed free, to proclaim the year of the Lord's favor. And then he rolled up the scroll, gave it back to the attendant, sat down, and the eyes of everyone in the synagogue were fastened to him. And he began by saying to them, today this scripture is fulfilled in your hearing. See, this is the very beginning of Jesus' ministry, and he is prophesying, speaking over his next few years and the work that he had before him and the calling that he'd been given to. And after that, he went about that work with a ferocious tenacity as an example and as a model to us and to you and to me, that we have good things to do with our lives. We have purposeful things to do with our lives. We have meaning in our lives. And a lot of it is found in working hard and serving well. There's rest, there's prayer, and there's hard work and serving well. And so I would just say this in conclusion. You were meant to work hard at your job. You were meant to change your workplace. You were also meant to work hard in your family. If you have a family, you're meant to work hard for your family. You're meant to work hard in your family. You're meant to work hard with your family. But you're also meant to work hard with your church family. That is just, that is what we see modeled to us. And what we see from the scriptures as the best representation of a keystone habit that we see from Jesus. with which will help you to leave an impact on this world and to change your life for the better. So those are the first three. Last one is this, is community. We see that in the life of Jesus. We see community. Until his death, Jesus did absolutely everything out of a deep relationship with other people. Namely his 12 disciples, but we also know that he had kind of an inner circle amongst those 12 with three, with Peter, James, and John, that he had kind of special and close relationship with them. And every single thing that we see him doing, outside of resting and praying, is in the context of that relationship and that community that he has with other people. I love this African proverb. I don't know if you've ever heard it before, but I'll probably be saying it a ton because I'm just trying to live it right now. But it says this: if you want to go fast, go alone. You want to go fast in life, go alone. But if you want to go far in life, go together. I think that's so profound. I think that's so good, and I think that's so true from what we see in the life of Jesus. I mean, he could have done it all by himself. But he left his mission. Through community, he left his mission up to 12 knuckleheads who went out and changed the world as a result of the relationships that they had, the community they experienced, and the time that they had together. See, I say this to younger students all the time, but you're the sum of your 5 greatest relationships. You just are. And we say this at Church 180 all the time, or at least we need to if we don't. But life change, okay, meaning habit change, meaning changing 50% of what you do that's habitual. Life change happens best in the context of relationships. It just does. Life change happens best in the context of relationships. Therefore, community is a keystone habit, I believe, that we see from the life of Jesus that can cause a chain reaction to every single other habit or area of our lives. I mean, there are all kinds of little passages within the scriptures. I mean, the only one I was going to point out to you is John 3:22, which says this: after this, Jesus and his disciples went out to the Judean countryside, where they spent some time together and baptized. Where they spent some time together. And so that said, at Church 180, we're working hard to bring groups and group life and group dynamics into the life and fabric of our church. People that you can sit around a coffee table with, people you can sit in a living room with, people you can sit around a campfire with, people you can laugh with, have fun with, cry with, do life with. We're working on bringing that into the life of our brand new, young, small church. But in the meantime, we're going to do our best, okay? Hear me on this. We're going to do our best to facilitate this camaraderie and to facilitate this community through our service teams. See, I'm just throwing it out there. Like, we are doing everything we can to get back to gathering together weekly. A big group of us together, we're doing everything we can to get back to gathering together weekly. In order to do this, we're trying to boost, we're trying to rebuild a lot of our teams that have atrophied over the past year of COVID. So specifically our Setup Teardown team, our hospitality team, our 180 Kids team. These are some of the teams that we're trying to give a boost. And what we're saying is, man, joining a team and getting in a team environment, we want to make that a great experience where you can experience camaraderie and experience community through that. That's going to be our commitment and what we're working towards in these following months. So that said, if you're watching this, online today, we're going to be in person as well. But you're watching this online, I would love for you to click that link on our What Up page that says join a team and pick a team to join, to experience some of this community that we're talking about that was modeled by Jesus, that we believe can have the power to change, be a keystone habit and change other habits in your life. So there's what I consider to be the keystone habits of Jesus, the rhythms and the routines. Heck, at some point we'll do a whole series and take a whole week for each of them. But for now, I wanted to go to the keystone habits to wrap up our series of 50-50. And that said, we're going to move into a time of communion. And communion is where we just look back to the life that Jesus lived and all the events leading up to his death on the cross and his resurrection and rising from the dead. And we celebrate it. We celebrate the fact that because his body was broken, his blood was spilled out, that you and I get to stand right before God, that was a payment for our wrongs, and we get to stand right before God and to be made new, and to be given a second chance, and to have hope, and to get to spend forever and ever and ever in eternity with him. And so as we sing this next song, I'm just going to encourage you to just get some drink and to get some food and to remember the body of Jesus that was broken and the blood of Jesus that was spilled out so that we could have that chance and establish new routines and new habits in our lives. So Jesus, thank you for what you did. Thank you for the way that you modeled, God, all these things with our lives. And God, I pray that communion this week would be a time that, this song, this act would be just a time that we can start to look back and remember, Lord, these habits, these Keystone habits you had, and that through the power of the cross that we could walk those into our lives, and that the rhythm of our lives, the cadence of our lives would look more like yours. We are on this planet. So it's in your name we pray, Jesus. Amen.
Search the world, it couldn't fill me. Man's empty praise and treasures of faith are never enough. You came along and put me back together. Every desire is now satisfied here in your love. Oh, there's nothing better than you. There's nothing better than you. Lord, there's nothing. Nothing is better than you. Afraid to show you my weakness and my failures and flaws. Lord, you've seen them all, and you still call me friend. 'Cause the God of the mountain is the God of the valley. Your mercy and grace won't find me again. Oh, there's nothing better than you. There's nothing better than you. Lord, there's nothing. Nothing is better than you. Lord, there's nothing better than you. There's nothing better than you. Lord, there's nothing. Nothing is better than you. You turn mourning to dancing. You give beauty for ashes. You turn shame into glory. You're the only one who can. You turn mourning to dancing. You give beauty for ashes. You turn shame into glory. You're the only one who can. You turn grace into gardens. better than you. There's nothing, nothing is better than you. Oh, there's nothing better than you. There's nothing better than you. There's nothing, nothing is better than you. You turn mourning to dancing. You give beauty for ashes. You turn shame into glory. You're the only one who can. You turn graves into gardens. You turn bones into